Hi guys! Sound is a big part of the racing experience, and it is no secret that I was pretty disappointed with the out-of-the-box experience for the Crystal Light. Things have changed in the long term with better sound output through software, but could there be more? Pimax has the answer with the DMAS official sound mod. Does it pump up the volume or leave us wondering what all the noise is about? Let's find out, shall we? Having a look at the DMAS sound upgrade here, they're very much like what you would see on the over-ear solutions on the Valve Index or the HP Reverb G2. Those are great sound configurations with fantastic output, but not for everyone. But most people agree this is one of the best out there for VR, so it bodes well for the DMAS as it looks like it is manufactured in the same place. It is connected to the Crystal Light or Crystal Super audio output via contacts within the headset itself. They look quite attractive when they're put on, especially compared to the little plastic nubs that come by default with the headset, and they have Pimax branding on the silver arms. Weirdly though, they are blue in colour around the plastic surround. I guess this is because that was the colour scheme used in the older headsets. They're not unattractive, though it will be slightly off-brand from the rest of the headset arrangement, especially if you have something like the Crystal Light, which is black, not blue. What they look like is probably less relevant, as most of us are concerned with how they sound and how adjustable they are. It's also quite possible I ended up with an older stock unit and they might have changed that since. Installation is a simple affair. We pull back the Velcro just on the other side of the audio solution on the headset, and this exposes some screws. We undo these screws and off pops the standard output. There is a little notch on the side of the surround, and that lines up with the DMAS upgrade, which slots inside and then it's screwed back together. It is quite easy to get this a little cross-threaded, and doing so will stop contact with your headset, so just be aware when you are fitting it and make sure it's nice and flush once installed. The audio output levels from the Pimax Crystal Light were pretty poor at first launch. I was able to hear every rattle, bang and click from my sim rig, but not so much audio output from the games themselves. This is definitely immersion breaking, and it made me a lot more conscious of the things going on in the background, like my bass shakers and rattles of the rig. Out of the box, I was still running the 0.05 headset firmware, and this wasn't sufficient to allow me to recommend something like the DMAS upgrade. In fact, when I was writing this up, I was already thinking that I was going to be slamming the hell out of this upgrade because it's expensive and it makes very little difference. However, firmware 1.06 and above for the Crystal Light unlocks a lot more volume, and with that volume we can then play around with some of the settings to unlock audio from the DMAS upgrade, making it a much more viable alternative to, say, plugging in your own headset solution. With the Crystal Light's latest firmware, I can confirm that volume levels are much more satisfactory. In fact, things like Crew Chief, I had to reduce the volume because Jim was just shouting in my ear. I still have to run the headset volume at 100% to get levels that I want, but it's much more acceptable than it used to be. To get the most out of the audio upgrade, unfortunately, we do have to install an amplifier, as the out-of-the-box config isn't fantastic. I'm using Equalizer APO as my free equalizer of choice. It adds a few milliseconds of latency, but honestly, it's not hugely noticeable. Once we open up the config editor for Equalizer APO, then we have a preamp of minus 5.2 decibels to give us a little bit of headroom for our configuration. Then onto the graphic equalizer, we have the following 15 bands set. 25 Hz is set at 5.2. 40 Hz at 5.2 also, 63 Hz at 4.7, 100 Hz is 3.4, 400 is minus 5.8, 360 is minus 6.6, 1000 and 1600 are set to minus 7, 2500 is set to minus 4.5, 4000 is minus 0.9, and then 10,000 and 16,000 are 5.2. These are the settings that I found most useful for sims like iRacing, allowing me to experience a wide range of effects, but feel free to play around with your own preferences. The out-of-the-box experience for the DMAS is okay. It's better than the built-in solution, and with the latest firmware it really pumps out enough volume for it to be a good alternative to a third-party audio solution. It somehow isn't as good as the G2 or the Index Audio, but it is on par with what I've experienced with the Quest 3, or perhaps actually a little better. Once we add the equalizer in the mix, the audio is pretty good. It has enough punch for you to be able to hear that engine noise in your ears, but also allow you to hear what Jim is telling you on the crew. Prior to running the latest firmware, I was finding myself missing messages from Crew Chief and being unable to pick out people's voices on Discord when I was racing. With these new settings, I can definitely hear a lot more. At $1,000, the DMAS has to be very good to be worthwhile. On that front, I was initially disappointed. The volume uplift compared to the stock option was minimal, but with the equalizer and the new firmware, things are improved. I'd still say the DMAS is behind something like the Valve Index, but is not significantly so, and is pretty decent. Whether they provide good value for money though, that's a tougher sell. Honestly, I think these should be given as a discounted item when you buy the headset for it to be really worthwhile. At $100 though, it's tough to say this is good value for money as an upgrade. So if you can get them on sale, or better yet free with the headset, then they could be absolutely worth getting. Out of the box, the Pimax DMAS upgrade is a little disappointing. However, with the latest firmware and with my equalizer tweaks, they're actually pretty good and able to give you enough sound punch to feel like an upgrade. For me, I would like to see these just being included as a standard bundle. Maybe bumping up the price a little as a result, but adding in an additional $100 payment on top of the headset is a tough sell for me. For the money, I expect a much better all-round sound experience with deeper bass and brighter mids. These little drivers don't quite hit that mark without software adjustment. Pimax release great products, and I have to say in this configuration I'm in love with the Crystal Light. I just feel a little aggrieved that it didn't come out of the box like this. I do think this sound upgrade offers a significant improvement over the default audio solution, but I don't think it should have been a paid for mod that is often out of stock. Now, I hope you've liked this brief review of the DMAS upgrade for the Pimax Crystal Light, and if you have, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing on this channel and like to see more, don't forget to subscribe. And until next time guys, bye for now.